Okay, thank you.
Um, I was thinking, what would be beneficial? And one of the things that I thought was all the cases that we looked at, there was a clear sense of purpose on the part of the leadership. And if you look at Nehemiah, it was not only to rebuild the wall, but to be what God intended when he said that, you'll be a great nation. You'll be my message takers. Breton, it was more than just solving crime, is to rebuild quality of life in New York City. And Orno, the same thing, is we can't be, producing waste because we want to produce quality product for our customers. Same thing with Gosen. In this case, with Nissan, it says the obvious potential problem was that the place would go bankrupt and then we all lose our jobs, kind of thing. So there was a very clear sense of purpose on all of them. But it also was in a way that people could relate to it. They would benefit from it. And then I was thinking back on some of my experiences, and one time one joined not joined, but I was part of an effort to turn around a company, and they had a logo, and on the stack for the factory, it has in big letters "profit." And now that I think of it, that has to be the worst thing they could have done. Because the issue is not profit, because people will say, yeah, you want to do it on the back of my sweat. Instead of saying, by being the best, we would be assuring jobs, we would be growing, we would be providing opportunities, we could be all kinds of things. So the key thing is all of those areas is how do you set up or how do you verbalize the reason for the organization to exist and the benefit that it means for its members. Because eventually what you want in every one of those cases is not just to have the people suffer through a change, but to be part of it. So they have to be able to relate to what's happening. Otherwise, they say, oh, there we go again. I remember one place they kept on telling me, well, we're used to those flavors of the month. In other words, every once in a while, something would come up. And that was a new slogan that people had in mind. So the question is how do you package that? How do you verbalize the issues? And how do you enlist grassroots support? And how do you get every level of management to champion what they're trying to do? So unless you have a strong chain throughout the organization, then it won't be very effective.
Mike, you've talked a lot about mindset, and you've talked
I'm
about
sorry?
mindset as a
Yeah.
starting point.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing you say is that it's very important not only for the leader to have mindset and the right mindset, a growth mindset,
Yes. Yes.
but also to not only communicate that to everyone at every level, but to
Yeah.
get buy-in from them at every
Yeah.
level. And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're about to share with us is how to do that.
Yeah.
I'm
So
looking forward to that.
then I remembered a fellow. His name is Edward Deming. I don't know if you ever heard the name.
I have heard of Deming.
He's a guru in statistical analysis and quality. And after the war, the Japanese invited him to go over to Japan to help them because I remember way back when, it shows how old I am. If it was made in Japan, people would say, well, that's junk, it's made in Japan. It's a little bit like us with China. If it's made in China, you don't know what the quality is like, kind of thing. Anyway, he went over there, and out of his work, he came up with 14 points. He calls it 14 points for management. And he says that they're foundational principles. And one of the statements, one of the quotes that I like that I copied from the internet is that the aim of leadership is to improve performance of man, machine, improve quality, increase output, and bring pride of workmanship to the people. So you can look at that and say, well, there's a couple of things. One of them is that unless you have a product, or unless you have a service, or unless you have a relationship that is conducive to performance, then guess what? You're going to suffer. And one key thing, and it's verbalized by a number of people, by Gosen, by Escalante, by Ono, you have to have faith in people. And one of the things that quote was saying, it says, the aim of leadership is not to merely find and record failures of men, but to remove the causes of failure. In other words, if something happens, don't go and beat people on the head. The question is, okay, how do we fix it? Move forward.
And Mike,
I'm sorry?
and in what you just said, for me, the little word we is very important. I had the privilege of having a wonderful supervisor. And when a problem came up, he didn't come and say, how could you do this? He didn't yell at you. He sat down with you and said, how can we move forward? So what you just said, that we is golden, because it's not the leader saying what's going to happen. It's working together with the people at every level to find a solution.
Exactly. Then the other thing that I found was, it says the ultimate purpose of collecting data is to provide a basis for action or recommendations. And the problem is really, I don't know if you had performance reviews, and I won't ask you to comment because it's not saying nice things about people, but really, most of the reviews that I've had were more like something that I dreaded. Not because I did anything wrong or wasn't performing, because I was promoted several times to higher positions at a very young age, so it wasn't an issue of that. But it was pain to listen to things that sometimes I totally disagreed with, but they've got the last word, so what can you do? So the purpose of data is not to beat people on the head, but to figure out and say, okay, what do we do about it? And I did the same thing with the last place that I was at. We were looking not only at the places where were poor, the days we had a poor rate of performance, but also looking at the days where the numbers were high. And the question was, what happened then, and how do we replicate it? Okay, and that's hard work. In most places that I've been at, supervisors and managers don't spend the time doing that. It's a foreign thought. So anyway, that's one thing. So the second thing that I thought is okay, how do you convey what we're trying to do, or what we ought to accomplish or try to accomplish? And there again, Deming, part of his 14 points, he's got several things to say about it. One, he says, eliminate slogans and targets. remove posters, exhortations, numerical goals asking for zero defects, unless, unless accompanied by specific methods required to achieve them. In other words, the issue is not necessarily that you have a goal, but it's just the beginning of a conversation. It's as if we have this kind of number, what do we do? What do we have to do to be able to hit it? So that's one thing. The second thing it says is create an environment of trust, open communication, so that the employees feel asking questions and reporting problems. In other words, you gotta have that dialogue to be able to do that. And Nehemiah is a good example of that because he was working on the wall, and when people feel threatened by the people on the outside who were saying, "We're going to come and kill you," he didn't ignore it. He heard it and he acted. And the same thing when it was time to pay back the debt. Guess what? That's not kosher. We don't do those kinds of things. So give them back their money, help them to succeed. So the goals usually is a thing I believe in, but not for the sake of a number and for something to beat people over the head when you do performance reviews, but more for the beginning of a dialogue that says, what would we do differently to be able to achieve this? It reminds me a little bit of a saying that Einstein had. It says, if you want change, but you do the same things, this is madness. Nothing will happen because you know that the results of the past will continue unless you do something different. So one place I saw that they had goals, and they had three types of goals. And I believe that, companies every year have to talk to shareholders and financial analysts in Wall Street and say what they think they're going to accomplish. And that's a critical conversation because it sets the value of the shares to the company. People say, oh, that's what's going to happen. So it's a good investment, or no, it's not going anywhere. Therefore, it's not. We will find another place to put our money. So I believe that you're going to meet what typical company, because the logo says a budget. A budget is a given. You gotta meet that. But goals, you're going to have three different kinds of goals. That's what I saw. One of them is, this is what we ought to be able to accomplish, a base level kind of goal. The second level is higher than that and say, okay, if we did things differently, or what is it that we can do to be able to reach a higher level and have that conversation. And the third one is, if you had a magic wand and solved all the problems that exist at this time, what kind of results do you think we should get? And when you start seeing what the problems are, what the impairments are, what are the things that are stopping people from doing, then you can start addressing them. So the whole idea of goals is, again, going back to the mindset. What do we believe in? We believe in succeeding and helping people succeed. And that's the key thing. One place I was at in Boston, in a hospital, they had asked me to join an advisory board because they were doing, quote, improving performance and quality. And two things I was shocked to find out is that if you're sick, the worst places you can go is the hospital because the odds are that you'll be back a second time for something that you contracted while you were over there. So I throw my hands up in the air and say, what what's this, What's it's incredible. Anyway, but what was interesting is that they had a board with the kind of improvements, the kinds of things that people were working on. And the thing was at least 6 months old. There was nothing current. So when you look at goals and when you look at the action plans, you've got to have things, milestones that you can see the progress. Because if it's a long-term kind of deadline, then it's not the last day of that period that you decide to say, okay, we're going to look and see how close we are, kind of thing. It's too late. And it's something that Yunus realized when he was making those small loans to people who would never qualify for a loan, was that instead of waiting at the end of the year for them to pay back the loan, is I will have them pay back every week a portion of that loan. So by the time the year end is over, then they'll pay it up, and they can reapply for another loan if they want some more money. So the key thing with the goals is also the milestones that will also allow you to track the performance, and not again to beat people on the head, but more to say, I need help because it's not working out. I'm out of ideas, or other departments need to pitch in, or whatever. And that's really what makes a team. And you achieve a lot more as a team than you do as an individual.
And doing it that way, it's immediate, it's daily. It's not just
Yes,
waiting until the end of a long term.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly.
We need to wind up. We're out of time. Any
Okay.
final thoughts?
So the final thought is there's a couple of things going on when you do that. One is you have a compounding effect. In other words, if you have many people pitching in, and all of those improvements, all of those ideas add to each other. And by the time you look back, you say, wow, we really covered some ground.
Hmm.
A multiplier effect is that it's not the boss that will get the results. It's not Yunus who got the results. It's not um, all of those people who know anything. It's the people and people's doing the work. So you want to have as many people as you can pitching in to get results. And that really will create excitement in the job, uh, satisfaction, high morale and things of that sort. So, and the last thing we'll say is that, going back to Ephesians 4:22 in the Bible, or Romans 12:2, the renewing of your mind and putting off and putting on. You've got to replace things, not to continue them, but to replace them with better approaches, better thoughts, better ideas. And that across the board. And the starting point is goals, but goals not to beat people on the head, but to help them succeed and to find ways to make it happen. And that's what I was trying to.
Thank
And
you
but
very much.
it's easier said than done.
That's excellent. And thank you. I think I'm going to call this the aim of leadership because you've given us some really important thoughts that will incorporate all that we've talked about so far.
Yes,
Thank you. Look forward to our next visit.
very good. It's a beautiful day. Take care.
You take care too.